My name is Rick Wilson, and I served as an ABH-3 aviation bosun mate, third class. And after a year or so in Philadelphia, they cut me new orders, and I was transferred to an anti-submarine squadron in Norfolk, Virginia. They just came to me one day. I mean, I didn't know much about Navy life, and they called me over to the personnel office one day and said, okay, your time in Philadelphia is over. You're being transferred to an anti-submarine squadron in Norfolk, Naval Air Station, Norfolk, Virginia. And I said, oh wow, because I was an aviation part of the organization. So they transferred me down to Norfolk, and at that time we used Grumman S-2s, airplanes, and they were piston operated. And initially I was cleaning the hangars and pushing the planes around, and then finally they started training me on how it was to handle a plane, the wheel chocks, and what hand signals to use to the pilots, and it just moved on from there. And basically that was my duty. I was what's referred to as a plane captain. Essentially it was on-the-job training. I had people that were more experienced and more knowledgeable than I was, and they would take me around the airplane and saying, this is this, don't touch that, do this, and that was essentially my training. And shortly after I arrived, we deployed on a Mediterranean cruise aboard the USS Intrepid, CVS-11. On the Intrepid, when I got there, they assigned me to basically a seagoing janitor, swabbing decks, cleaning floors, and but my family brought me up. You know, somebody in authority gives you something to do, you do it, and you were pretty much left on your own. Okay, this is your space, clean it up. You got 3 hours, and I went in there and I cleaned it up. I didn't go brick, didn't take unnecessary coffee breaks. When the time came, they said, okay, you got 15, you know, go get a coffee and then come back. So I was always doing what they asked me to do, and I wasn't first in line to go up onto the flight deck, but I guess they liked what I did, so they said, okay, your turn, you're going up there. So I transitioned up to full plane captain, on board a ship, refuel, oil, and sit in the aircraft. Anytime that it was on the deck, on the flight deck, or on the hangar deck, somebody had to be in it. And for the aircraft that I was responsible for, number 36, as a matter of fact, I still remember, I was in it. But it was a Grumman S-2F model, and as a matter of fact, when we came back stateside, they upgraded those models to an S-2G, I believe, Grumman, anti-submarine. On the Intrepid, the chow was okay. I mean, I always ate what they served me, and everything that I took, I always ate. It was we were in the Mediterranean. It was hot. The Intrepid didn't have a lot of air conditioning, and it was really, really hot in our berthing space. Not that hot. It was okay. Life aboard the ship, you know, you got used to it. They'd have flight operations. We were basically 12 on and 12 off. So in your time off, they used to show movies occasionally at nighttime on the hangar deck. We'd hit a foreign port. It was port and starboard liberty, so if you're there 4 days, you were lucky if you got 2 days off. The inspection process of getting off the ship was pretty rigid. I recall one time I was down to my last white. We were wearing white uniforms, and we had white shirts, which exposed your belt, and then we had jumpers, which were a little warmer. My belt had a little spot on it. Of course, you just couldn't turn it around because it had your name on it, and that you couldn't do that. But I thought, one little spot, are they going to stop me from going into Naples? Well, yeah, they did. And I didn't have any more white belts, and I just didn't know how I was going to get around this because I didn't want to stay on the ship. And you couldn't really borrow somebody else's gear if you got caught with something that wasn't yours, and everything you had your name on it. That was a semi-serious offense, even with their permission. So I was kind of in a quandary, and I really wanted to get off the ship. I wanted to see Naples. At the quarterdeck, there was a back passageway, and I'd gone down to my berthing space and trying to figure out what I was going to do, and figured, well, I guess I'm not going to get off the ship. And just then, one of my buddies who was ship's company, he worked in the post office, and they were carrying mail bags to send mail back stateside. And I thought, can I help you with that? Yeah, sure. So I picked up the mail bag, put it on my shoulder. We walked up, basically the back door, up the steps, onto the livery boat, and ashore. It pays to know. That was one of the first things I learned in the Navy too. It's if you knew the right people, you could always go to cut corners. Well, this one that cut me wouldn't let me get off the ship. I thought it was being a little unreasonable. I mean, you couldn't see the belt, so. But most of the time it was we had, and as a matter of fact, in our squadron, I was an airman and an E3, and I had courses to move up in rate. There was 2 courses you had to take. Actually, there was 3 elements. Number 1 was practical factors. You had to demonstrate that you knew how to tie knots, for example, trade things. And then there was military requirements. Expected you have some more knowledge other than boot camp about the Navy and protocol. And then there was the actual, and I was aviation bosun's mate handler, so you had to demonstrate that you knew all about it. And they were tough courses, very, very tough. And I was dragging my heels on it. And at one point in our cruise, we were over in the Mediterranean, and my division officer approached me and he asked me, he says, "How are you coming with your courses?" And I went, "Well, so." Fleet exams were held every 6 months, August and February. But you had to have your paperwork in 3 months before. That meant that you had to have all your paperwork and all your courses complete before that. Well, here it is. This was in the end of June, and I hadn't even finished my courses yet. My division officer approached me. He says, "How are you coming with the courses?" And I went, "Not so hot." He says, "Wilson," says, "I'll tell you what." And we were anchored for a fleet commanders conference in Golfo di Palmas in the Mediterranean off of Italy. And he said, "My college buddy is the education officer for the fleet." He says, "You finish those courses, you got 2 weeks. You finish those courses, I get you an exam." I mean, I was just speechless. So I buckled down and I finished everything off. I got through my practical factors, I got my military. The military stuff wasn't too bad, but the ABH course was tough slugging. But I got through it, and I had all my paperwork in, and true to his word, he got me an exam. And so when you ask about officers, the ones that we dealt with directly were in our squadron were first class. Well, we normally, the squadron was based in a barracks. So when we went on to the Intrepid, we moved everything that we had, airplanes, equipment, parts, all our gear onto the ship. And when the cruise was finished, we just reversed the process. We moved back into the barracks. In some ways, I was sorry to leave the Intrepid. It was a great ship, and it was a great experience. But the barracks life was really, really good, and very exciting experience. And I guess one of the highlights of sailing on the Intrepid, I'd never seen a carrier up close before. And we walked down the pier because we were bringing gear on board the ship. And we walked down the pier, and I'm looking up at this thing, and I'm going, "Oh my goodness, that is one big ship." And for the first few days on board the ship, we were getting lost because we didn't know how to get from point A to point B. But very quickly, we picked up on it, and I was a plane captain, and I worked on the flight deck, and it was kind of a scary experience. You had to be very attentive. And we had a few ports in the Mediterranean, Naples, Marseille, Palma, the ones that stand out in my mind, and it was a great experience. And we get back to Norfolk in September. It was a rather short cruise by today's standards. We get back to Norfolk, and the word was spreading that there was a brand new ship about to be commissioned, the USS America. And the rumors had it that the ship was going to be going on an around-the-world cruise. And I thought, I didn't know if I was going to make the Navy a full-time career, but I thought, what a good experience that would be. My kids would ask me, well, where did you go, Daddy? Well, I went around the world. So I put in I volunteered for it, and my application was accepted, and in September 1964, I was accepted into the pre-commissioning crew of the USS America CVA 66.